So I'm happy to introduce Dr. Betsy Cooper, who's the Executive Director of the Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity. She's going to lead the next panel on innovators.
Thank you so much, and thrilled to be here. You heard earlier from our faculty director, Steve Weber, about our Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity's interest in the talent pipeline. So today we're here to focus on a number of different stories about that pipeline. And one of the things that we think is so important is how we build the right type of stories around these issues. Just to give you one example, imagine you're setting up a new tech firm. You decide you want to have the real startup community. You decide you want to put some gym equipment in that tech firm. Sounds great, right? Well, what if you want to put that gym equipment in the same room as the offices are set up? You know, you have your little cubicles, and then you have the gym equipment sitting there. Sounds a little bit more interesting. For male colleagues, and I see this in a lot of tech firms in Silicon Valley, that sounds great. You know, you can go up, you can do your chin-ups, and then go right back to your the work that you were doing before, your stand-up desk, maybe sit on your ball, it'll be fine. But for women, they never use that gym equipment. And they never use that gym equipment because it is awkward to stand up in front of your male colleagues and do pull-ups, right? So when we're thinking about the stories that we need to be able to tell, we need to tell stories in a way that makes sense to women and men alike about how to create a more inclusive environment. And so today we're going to focus on the stories of 3 amazing women, leaders and innovators in the tech field. So I'm going to introduce them a little bit, but I really want you to get to know them themselves. So after brief introductions, I'll ask each one of them to tell 2 stories. First, a story about why they love their job. And second, a story about what it's like being a woman in their workforce. So we'll do each in turn. But so first, I want to introduce Jessica Ma. Jessica is the CEO of InDinero. She loves helping entrepreneurs run better businesses. She's grown the financial services company from 0 to multi-million-dollar revenues, over 150 employees now, and has been featured in the Forbes and Inc. 30 Under 30 lists. She, of course, is a Bayer alum, studied computer science at UC Berkeley, went through Y Combinator, and is a member of the Young Presidents Organization. So Jessica, why do you love your job?
I love my job because I kind of get to do whatever I want to do. So I run a company, and I started it fresh out of undergrad. I never wanted to take a real job, partially because I didn't think I was employable. I saw all my CS friends getting high-paying jobs at Facebook and Google, and I thought, all right, there's no way I could do that, which ironically led me down the path of starting my own company and also having my own success there. But I'd say it really comes down to the flexibility for me. I get to set my own schedule. I get to work on the projects and problems I'm most passionate about. And when I come to a conference or go to an event like this, I leave with so many great ideas. I could apply them right away. And people listen. And when I say, we're going to do this, it gets done. So that's why I love my job.
Sounds good. I wish I had a job like that. I do, actually. So second, I'd like to introduce Sarah Schaaf. Sarah's the head of community at Imgur, and I'm so grateful you told me how to pronounce that. She serves as the voice and champion of Imgur's community of over 150 million monthly active users. She's on the front line of community trends and oversees all user communication, ensuring that community feedback is represented in the company and in the brand. So Sarah, why do you love your job?
I have about a billion reasons that I love my job, but one of the biggest things for me is that Imgur is this image sharing community where people from all over the world share like interesting, funny, cute puppies, all sorts of awesome things that they find on the internet, and then others, through a democratic process, sort of upvote the things they love and downvote the things they don't love. And what's really cool about that is that it gives sort of the underdog a chance to tell a really awesome story. And the thing that I love most about my job is that I sort of get to empower those folks to be the best versions of themselves using their anonymity. So I plan awesome events, and one of the most recent events we had was these, obviously invite a bunch of Imgurians, is what we call our community members, to come together. These 2 people met. They, as people do, fell in love, and they had a wedding. And they invited all of their friends from the Imgur community, who they never actually met before in real life, to come to this wedding. And they embarked on a road trip after the wedding around the US, holding up this giant Imgur flag and all of their photos and all of their landmarks. And it's like one of those really special moments for me is seeing people who can connect through 140 characters online bring those things to lift their spirits in real life. So I love empowering people to connect and sort of break outside of their friends list and be awesome people on the internet.
Awesome. And so finally, I'd like to introduce Soledad and Tallada. So she is a computer systems engineer right up the hill at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and she's also a founder of GirlsCanHack. She studied computer science in Spain, where she was a software developer for over 8 years before she came over to the happier side here at Berkeley. And her expertise is in penetration testing using enterprise tools, finding vulnerabilities on or around more than 10,000 web servers at Berkeley National Lab. She was recently included in the top 20 most influential Latinos in technology for 2016. We are thrilled to have her. So why do you love your job?
Hi, I don't. I hate it. I'm kidding. I really love it. I used to be a programmer for a long time, a software developer. I studied computer science, but it was at some point I decided that it was a little bit static for me. So I was looking for a more dynamic job, so that's why I switched to security, and that was also one of my dream jobs. A thing that I know it was there, but I didn't know how to get to, I didn't know how to study, so I finally achieved that. That's one of the reasons that I love it. And the other reason is like, besides it's a very dynamic job, you are always like, you don't stop learning. You have to be on top of your game all the time. You get to learn from amazing people in the field, and you are always like doing new stuff, and also it's very creative because you are trying to create new solutions all the time. It can be stressful sometimes, but if you're really passionate, that stress, it becomes more of a challenge and something that you enjoy. So that's what I love.
Awesome. So before we go on, I just want to remind everyone that we really want this to be an interactive session. So some of my colleagues are passing around cards, and if you have questions, we'd love to capture them. We also want to hear more about your stories of being women in your field. So if you could each just tell us a little bit about a positive or negative experience you've had as a woman doing the work that you do.
I'd say there are just so many positives. Everyone wants to help me. I don't know, I think I just stand out of it, just being fresh out of school and trying to start a company. I had just so many great people saying, hey, like, whatever you need, I'm there for you, and I think that's a positive. I don't think I'd get that if I were an old white dude, to be perfectly frank. I think it's just a little annoying when I've had some investors say, hey, like, have you ever thought it was a problem? And I just have to kind of shake that question off and just not think about it. I just don't want to let this pollute my mind at all. I'm extremely focused on growing my company, and I don't want to worry about this problem. Even though I'm sure it is a problem, I don't want to get distracted by it. So,
great.
Yeah.
What about you, Sarah?
I love being a woman leader at Imgur. I think it's great. I have a ton of support. Where I think things can be tough is on the internet in general. It's very tough for a woman to have an opinion and say positive things about her field, for example. We're often open to sort of a lot of attacks. Again, like anytime a woman posts something, you're open to, hey, you look this way. And so here's a terrible thing I'm going to say about you. I don't want to even repeat some of the things I've heard on the internet. But yeah, that's probably the toughest part, I think, about being a woman online is sort of that. I would love to see us all work together to create welcoming, safe places for women to express opinions without being judged for the way she looks.
That's great. And since we're using social media today, positive messages would be much appreciated out there. So, what about you, Solda?
But being a woman, I mean, I can be very negative to this. I can talk forever also because I have a lot of anecdotes or experience. So, for example, I recently find out that a thing that was happening to me in college that is called a stereotype threat. So I didn't know that was such a thing till someone told me about it, and I was like, that happened to me in college. So we experienced all of this unconscious bias or conscious bias that plays against us in a way that we underperform, right? So if we know that we are supposed to be seen as in a negative way or less competent than our colleagues, so we are going to underperform in meetings, for example, or doing our job. So I didn't know that existed, and actually I could think about my experience in college. I will perform worse in tests, always that I thought that my peers were going to be better than me, because there were guys and they were supposed to be. So I had to deal with that back then. So I found out about tricky ways of dealing with it, but I wasn't conscious that that was the case. That's one thing. Another thing is like all of the unconscious bias that we experience as women, that I have a checklist here of the ones I've been through. So, and I just found out investigating a little more that I'm also exposed to a couple more only for being Latina, so that I didn't know. For example, if I'm being more assertive at work as my male colleagues are, so I'm at risk of being seen as angry. Mm-hmm. And emotional. I didn't know that. So now I'm aware of it, right? And in general, for women, we have things like women mistakes tend to be noticed more and remember longer. Check. Men will pay more attention to men speaking than women speaking in meetings. Men will interrupt a woman often in meetings, and that will be taken as normal. Women are presumed incompetent, men are presumed competent. This double standard we all have. We are judged by our looks. I can go on and on and on. You can go on. So women's successes often are attributed to luck and other causes, right? So men are skilled and we are lucky. So there's a lot of things I have experienced in my life, and it's good to have communication about it, so everybody's aware of it.
So one of the questions that we got from the audience, and thank you, these are fabulous questions, so keep them coming. So I'll just read the anecdote to you all. Me and my male friends who are startup founders use the excuse that we can't find women to be programmers, engineers, etc. And the questioner asks, what are some strategies I can use to tell them how to expand their networks? What do you think?
I think it's pretty hard to try to procrastinate that and wait till later, because who's going to want to join a team with 20 fratty dudes? It's just not really fun. So I think it's got to be a priority up front. So that's the first thing, just convincing them that it's got to be important and they have to figure out a way to get around that. And then two, my head of recruiting, so we have 5 full-time recruiters working at my company. And my head of recruiting, she used to do diversity recruiting at Nike. So that's what she was in charge of. And she thinks a lot about the numbers and the stats behind it, but also how do we systematically approach the different types of groups of people that are underrepresented in the company. So how do you target more of the women in CS groups, for example? Or how do we go to more of these meetups? And how do we give the minority candidates more of a chance to prove themselves, instead of just writing them off as soon as we write other people off? So there are a lot of strategies around it. And if you guys send me an email, CEO@InDinero.com, I could send you the checklist. But there's a tried and true approach to how to deal with this.
Interesting. Other thoughts?
Yeah. I love the suggestion of putting yourself out there at meetups. There's so many women in tech meetups. And look, we're at one. And I see overwhelmingly ladies here. Holler at the ladies, but where are the fellas at to come meet all of these wonderful? I see you guys though too. But you know what I mean. Put yourself out there. And I was actually reading the hashtag for this event. I think we're using hashtag Women in Tech. And I saw an article on there that the leading CEOs in tech, Elon Musk, et cetera, like, aren't following women leaders on Twitter. Why not? Put yourself out there and follow some people on Twitter. I think the more you can just hear from these women, the more open that you'll start to be when it comes to recruiting too.
And I think just since we're getting into that point, another question that we received was, what do you wish your male coworkers or people that are male in the field would do? And it seems like a lot of these points relate to that as well. So getting out there is really important, and getting the conversation going with everyone in the same space will be really important going forward as well. How do you think we can inspire more women to go into fields when there are tough stories? We heard a couple earlier about folks who thought about whether or not they would finish their first year engineering courses. We've heard stories about some of the difficulties people have faced going in. What could we do to make this field more energetic?
Lying to them. Like, no. First of all, being role models helps a lot. I think that's one of the things I missed when I was growing up as a professional. I didn't see anybody that I could look up to or be related to in a way that was similar to me, and that gives like a sense of belonging that everybody needs. So I think that's a key point to get more women in the conversation. Yeah.
Just build on the role model topic. I love the female founder conference at Y Combinator, and so many of the women I met there were starting a company or just about to start a company, and they all said, if I had access to this my first year of undergrad, I would have gone into CS or into electrical engineering or something else. And because they just weren't exposed to all those back-to-back role models of successful CS or E engineering-minded women. And so I think we just got to have more of those types of events earlier on and talk more about the pros of being a woman in technology and in engineering and entrepreneurship, less of the horror stories, because there are really, I think, a lot more positives and pros than there are cons. I mean, she had a laundry list of cons. I have a laundry list of pros. And my con list is like very, very micro small. I have
pros too.
I'd have more cons to being an older white dude than I'd have for being a woman, right? So I think we got to talk more about the pros.
Awesome.
Yeah. And there's a lot of pros. So one of the most inspiring things I always tell, like when I do the GirlsCanHack meetings, besides from the salary that is pretty good, it's like getting to be pioneers in the field and getting to come and change the history once and for all and put the women in the place that it needs to be and get a balance on STEAM careers. So that's I think it would be it's an inspiration to me. So
I would say, sorry.
No.
I would say that growing up as a kid, elementary school, high school, even college, I didn't even know that the tech world existed. I was like, okay, I could be a nurse, could be a doctor, actually I could be anything I want. I never felt that as a woman, any door was closed to me. I just didn't know what the doors were. I lived in a really small town. I found most of my knowledge about the world from television and from the internet. And I didn't see any shows where there were women IT people. I saw like nerdy dudes who hated their job. I'm like, that doesn't really look that fun. I would love to see, like, I don't want to be like the person who's like, the media, but honestly, it would be really awesome if there were like some exposure, I think, in the media for people to even know these awesome opportunities existed.
And I think the diversity of opportunities too. So
Yeah.
One thing that I always think about is gendered technologies themselves. Like think of the average video games, right? How many of them are shoot 'em up games versus games that are even neutral, let alone designed to appeal to women. And so when we're thinking about trying to demonstrate that technology is open to everyone, we have to think about the technology itself. And that's why some of the platforms we're talking about here are so great, because they're not gendered in that way. And I think that's why you're seeing more women getting involved into the field. So the more we can do to create that space, I think will be really important. Speaking of sort of how people are portrayed, we received the following question from the audience. Do you think that makeup and clothes have an influence to make oneself credible for men?
I have no idea. So, is this about if you wear more makeup or you're more feminine, you're gonna give less credit?
I think, so one of the reasons I chose the question is it's ambiguous. It's unclear whether they're suggesting that you need to wear makeup and certain types of clothes to be credible in the space, or whether that can make you less credible. So any thoughts, welcome.
I think it comes down to just being really confident in yourself and feeling like you're in your own skin. Like, I'm wearing what I'm wearing today because I just love wearing what I'm wearing. And some days I might just feel like wearing something else, and that's really cool too. So I'd go with that. I think ultimately, when it comes to just running our lives and building our businesses, I just want to do what makes me happy and what feels great. And if I lose opportunities along the way, then so be it. But I'm sure I'm going to gain so many more because I'm so confident and so happy and passionate. And so it kind of balances out.
Great.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just got a bunch of new questions here. But so, how are your own companies doing in terms of the percentage of women, both generally and in leadership? And if not where you'd like it to be, what are you thinking about doing to make it better?
Well, I think I work at Berkeley Lab. I think it's most like any other company in terms of the numbers are the same, very low. What I'm trying to do is like things like this. For example, being here, there's a couple of my colleagues in the audience, so I would like to get more communication and more like kind of training or visibility of what the women issues are. So
I'd say I'm about 40 to 45% women in both of those questions. So not quite 50-50, but it's gone up from probably 10-20% just a year and a half ago to 40 to 45% after I hired that head of talent who's the diversity recruiter I told you about. So that goes for a long way. Just having a head of recruiting in the company who's very diversity recruiting focused, that makes the biggest difference.
Fantastic.
I think Imgur is really lucky to have awesome women that work for us, and especially in director and head roles is really cool. I think one thing that we do is actually sponsor events. We've sponsored women in tech panels before, and that sort of allows us to extend our reach as far as like letting women know that we're welcome to them, as well as going and bringing them to us.
Fantastic, and we're taking sponsorships for next year if anyone out there is interested.
Noted.
So and I think this is especially applicable to you, Jessica, how do you manage to overcome, and I'm reading it the way it was phrased, how do you manage to overcome being a woman when specifically asking for funding? I am a smart, energetic woman. Why do I get told to marry a millionaire, but an engineer nerd is taken seriously?
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre. We're probably talking to the wrong people, but you could email me, and I'd be happy to talk about that more. But when I pitch people, I'm pretty aggressive and hard driving. I was told once by a female VC, you would all know her name, and she told me that I have a reputation for being incredibly aggressive when I talk to investors, and I'm really proud of that. I want to be aggressive, and I'm so happy about that. Thank you. I want to have a reputation for being aggressive, and I think that's why I've been able to ask for money and say, look, this is what I need. Here are the terms. Take it or leave it. And if you don't want it, I've got a line of people right behind you willing to give me millions of dollars more. And so that's what we've done.
And interesting, because I've also been told that I'm extremely aggressive, and I'm pretty confident that a number of you who are nodding your heads have been told the same thing as well. So I think Jessica's lesson is great. Not only do you want to be aggressive, but you need to take that as a positive thing, because in many cases I think it can be. So,
yeah.
But we got to change the perspective that leads people to assume that if you're being told that, it's a negative and you need to scale back or step back. Another key issue that often comes up in this space is sort of work-life balance. So we've all heard about the startup founder who, basically sleeps 2 hours a night, many, many days in a row. We've heard stories about, trying to get through your undergrad classes and having to take more credits than you have time for while still trying to do your extracurriculars, et cetera. how do you think your fields are doing in terms of work-life balance, and any thoughts on either how they've achieved a good balance or what you could do to make it better?
So I think it depends on the company and also the role you're taking. I mean, I think in technology, it could be pretty flexible depending on the role. Especially in cybersecurity, it can be very flexible. I mean, it's not only flexible hours, but it's the possibility of working remotely that helps about the balance. No, I mean, if you have children or something else in your life, I think it's a very good field for that. I mean, repeating that it depends on the role and the company sometimes. But for cybersecurity, I think it's very achievable, like to have a good life balance.
I think work-life balance means different things to different people. Like you use the example of the 2 hours sleep night. Like I'm all about that. I love working. I work all the time, and like that's exactly what I want my life to be. So that is work-life balance for me. But I think as a company, speaking for Imgur itself, we offer really great PTO. We offer really great maternity leave. We allow work from home, and we offer sort of these things that, for others who aren't obsessed with working, like I am, the ability to sort of focus on another part of your life. And even though I don't necessarily take advantage of those things as much as like maybe I should, it's there, and people are supported when they want to take those things.
I'm a big fan of work-life integration. So on my weekends, I hang out with my girlfriends who just so happen to be entrepreneurs. So we commiserate with each other, we give each other help and advice, and we go to founder dinners together, and we go to a lot of just fun entrepreneur events. And is that work? Is that fun? Or it's both. So I don't really think of it as a balance. I just love doing both. With that said, the honest truth is this whole working 80-hour-a-week for CEOs thing is a bunch of hogwash. The media will say, oh, you work all the time. I'm like, oh, yeah, all the frickin' time. The reality is I take my weekends off. I have vacation. I sleep 8 hours a day. But don't tell the reporters.
Yeah, totally.
That's off the record, ladies and gentlemen. So I received a comment from the audience asking about the stereotype that men are better than leaders than women because women tend to be emotional rather than rational. What do you think of that stereotype, and how would you suggest responding to it?
Ugh. That's how I feel when that stereotype is said. I feel like when women often are aggressive and confident or want to share an opinion, that is often construed as being emotional, whereas maybe it isn't being emotional. I don't know what the answer is, but I find that frustrating as well, I guess.
Well, if we are emotional, so what? So we're different, and that's it. That's the thing. I mean, it has to be an integration of a different way of doing things that women can, get in the conversation. So
I love that. That's unapologetic confidence right there.
I'd also question the questioner, right? You can be emotional and rational. Those two things are not necessarily contradictory.
Yeah.
I think women do have emotions. I think so do men. And I believe that it's okay to express those as well as to express irrationality. So I think we have to start acknowledging the fact that those differences can actually lead to really interesting outcomes rather than just negativity. So, another question from the audience. How do you believe women CEOs will make it to be recognized leaders? Right now, in our society, they're considered to be unequal. What specific steps do you think we can take to make a change?
I can start.
Yeah, you could start.
So there's a lot of things that we can do. So one of the things that I will do in companies and organizations is put more checks, like more people checking, like on women. Like how women, I mean, if you have companies that have teams of 10 people where there's one woman or no women at all, something is wrong. So first of all, there has to be people checking on that, and there has to be people protecting those women that are already in the field, so to prevent the history repeating itself. So that we can, in a way, just like break the system somehow and get more women, like inject more women, whatever it takes. So.
Other thoughts?
I've been thinking a lot more about how to do more leadership mentoring in my company. We have over 200 employees now, so my bio's a little out of date since I emailed you guys a few months ago.
You've been doing a lot of hiring, huh?
Yeah, and we just have so many new women leaders in the company, and I was just thinking about like how I'll go on and have multiple companies over the course of my career, and I'd love if at least half of them were filled by female CEOs. But the natural pool out there is definitely not as big, but within my companies, I want to mentor a lot more of them so that we could hire from within, and I think we just got to invest more in those kinds of activities and projects to see more future CEOs. But I think that I'm seeing a lot of improvements right now. I'm seeing a lot of support for aspiring female entrepreneurs and CEOs. So if any of you guys are working on a company and you want access to those groups or those networking dinners and whatnot, send me an email and I'll hook you up with that.
And just to follow up on that, we talk a lot about mentorship, but I don't think we necessarily dig into what that means. So I'd love if you have any examples of something specific a mentor has done to help you, or how you think mentors can be most effective. It's one thing to pair up two people, but what should they do once they get in the room?
Well, I could talk about a story from yesterday. So I was seeing an old mentor of mine, Brian Chesky. He's the CEO of Airbnb. So we spent an hour together, and I was kind of commiserating with him about how my company is only we're going to be a multi-$100-million market cap company, and Airbnb's a freaking behemoth. And I'm like, why the hell are you more successful than I am? And you started only a few years before I did. And he was just saying, it's helping me out, thinking about like my vision, my direction. And he said, all right, here's your homework. You're going to go do that, and you're going to come back to me with your plan, and then I'm going to critique it. And so having the homework component and the accountability piece, that's how I like to receive mentorship. And so that's one example, but I've got a few other mentors like that who I'll see when I'm at an inflection point and have that vulnerable conversation with. So everyone's got to, I think the key is shooting really big and finding mentors who you don't think you'd otherwise have access to and trying to get on their radar. And finding someone who you really have a good personality fit with. Like Brian, I have a great fit with, and some other people I met at Cal I have a great fit with, and some mentors intimidate me. They make me feel scared, and I don't want to share with them all the bad news in my company. And so those relationships don't work out so well.
I'm a huge advocate for crowdsourcing your mentors, because for me, I actually tried to find like that one person who was going to be my mentor rock, and that just didn't work for me. I was scared, and I didn't feel like we had anything in common, and it was like pressure to connect with this one person. But where I do find the most awesome advice is like amongst my coworkers, other managers on my team. I'll often be like, hey, do you want to go get a coffee? I'll tell them about a problem I'm experiencing. Like, hey, I'm actually experiencing the same problem. And we wouldn't have known that we could work together and learn from each other on this thing if we wouldn't have just grabbed a coffee. So I try and meet with people from all different departments at my team. And I think that's something, if you're sort of a new junior employee, that you should definitely do. You'll be surprised how, I think, open people are. But of course, mentorship is a two-way street. So on the flip side, I would suggest to senior leaders and CEOs, like, be available for those people who want to have a coffee, teach your learnings. I already really want you to be my mentor. You're like a genius right now. So
I was thinking,
like,
oh my
look
God,
at all
I
these
gotta give
amazing women. I'm here, and I'm like, let me
give
get
you guys a
coffees with
call.
all these people.
And just to follow up on one of those points, one of the things that I've discovered sort of is that it's not just about mentorship where one of you is more senior to the other. It's also about sharing stories with people who are at the same point in your career. So I'm at a point in my career where I both am managing people below me and other people are managing me. And so you're in this middle level area, and talking to other people about their experiences, they're very similar across the board. And so you can actually problem solve with people, not just just who are mentors and teaching you how to get through points based on their past experiences, but also based on what they're doing in the present. And so that's been really helpful for me. So I think we have time for one final question. So I just ask each of you, if you were thinking about the one bumper sticker that you wish people would take away from this conversation, what would you suggest to the audience?
What?
Should I start singing the Jeopardy theme song? Or?
I'd say go out of your way to reach out and network with people you want to talk to, and you'll probably get turned down, but 1 out of 5 times you'll get a yes back. Like Brian, for example, is someone I thought I'd get turned down by, or Mark Benioff at Salesforce. Back when I was at Cal, I just sent him a cold email asking for help on something, and he replied back. And I've done that to so many people now in Silicon Valley. You'd be surprised by who you'll be able to get in touch with. So I'd say that's my one parting piece of wisdom.
Great advice.
I don't know if that one's going to fit on the bumper sticker.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, a little long.
Yeah. This one's totally already taken, but I would say just do it. Because totally agree. Like, one of the biggest things that has been a driver for me in my career is just like asking for the thing that I think is unattainable and finding out that it is actually possible. Emailing all the people I can email and maybe getting a response, or asking the person for coffee and maybe they say yes. And then I'm usually an introvert, and it's sort of hard for me to want to get myself to do those things, but oftentimes it's worth putting yourself through that moment of discomfort to get the reward that is possible. So do it, go for it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm in the same line. I would say, like, jump in. Like, second of all, come help us, because we need help. We need to be like around more women, and we need you. I mean, the field needs you. Math, science, technology, and engineer need more women. I mean, the more diverse, the better. And I think we have a lot to put out there in the field. So we actually need more women. So come on in.
And I guess I'll just conclude with it's not too late. As someone who came to women in tech later in my career, no matter where you are, whether you're first year undergrad, mid-career, or thinking about your next steps, it's not too late to enter the field, and there are a lot of amazing leaders and innovators here to help you. So with that, I'd like to thank our panel for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.